Welcome to Badass Ladyfolk. I'm your host, Christine Stoddard. In this episode, I'm so excited to have playwright, actress, and theater administrator, Amanda DeLalla. Hi!
Hi, Christine.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, for our dear watchers and listeners, because we are video, TV, and audio, podcast, radio, all of that, everywhere, all the places. I want them to know that we met online during quarantine.
Sure did.
Could you talk about the play in which we met, the circumstances, and what that project means to you now, a couple years later?
Sure. It was kind of a delightful combination of factors, despite being during a pandemic time. So I'm a member of the Dramatists Guild, and they do this event called Friday Night Footlights, which is they hold a lottery, and any playwright in the guild who wants to have their work presented puts their name into the lottery, and then they pick like however many for that Friday night. And they are back to doing it in person now, but back then it was over Zoom. And I put in for a September Friday, and as luck would have it, my name got picked, and I was very shocked. But I was very happy. And the play that I had submitted was called The Cost of Conquest. It is a war play. It's about 40 minutes, so about a one act. And it takes two different paths, so to speak. It was directly inspired by the video game franchise Fire Emblem, which I love. And video games actually inspire a lot of my writing work. I can go more into that later.
Yeah.
But I had to corral a cast, send them all the scripts. Everybody obviously was on book. And then we all went on Zoom and read the play with stage directions and all that. And when I say a great combination, I'm particularly referring to the cast involved.
Woo!
You would know, yes. I read a role, and you, Miss Christine, you read a role. And the other roles were read by this great group of folks. A lot of them were from the Staten Island theater scene, which is my home borough. And I still live there, 30 years now. And they all were completely game, and they all absolutely nailed their roles. And even the fellow who did the stage directions, I'd like to give a shout out to him, Thomas Riley, because he came in at the last minute and he read those stage directions with such gravitas. It was the most amazing thing that I had ever seen, and I was just so proud of the work that everybody did and their willingness to jump in on this project with me, and hearing the script read aloud, and I remember one of the actors, Matt, he actually changed his Zoom background to look like a medieval castle so that it would fit the setting. And that was just another level of genius that I wouldn't have expected. Although he's a playwright also, so I maybe I should expect him to be a genius. But anyway, and it's been a few years, and I've made a few tweaks to the play since then. Not too many. Just tightening it up in some places or making the dialogue sharper. And I'm very glad that I was able to create something like that even during a pandemic time.
Yeah.
It's nice. It was nice for me to have something to show for it, so to speak, not to be sitting around the house moping or going down dark roads in my mind or anything like that, just to put it into something constructive. And now I have a nice 40-minute play that requires fight choreography and all that happy stuff. And
yeah. So you mentioned several people in the cast are from the Staten Island theater community.
They are.
Could you describe what that community is like?
It's definitely very tight-knit. Everybody knows everybody. It's really hysterical how many mutual friends that everybody has. Even folks that I've never worked with personally, somebody will mention them in passing, and I'll be like, oh, you know that person, you know, and I'm just amazed at how small of an island Staten Island is. I mean, I do believe it's the least populated of the boroughs, but it's the largest in like surface, the third largest in surface area, if memory serves. But anyway,
I don't know all the stats.
that's okay. You know what? I'm not good at geography at all, so that might be completely wrong. But in any case, it's still a very a suburban place as opposed to the rest of the boroughs, which are more urbanized, metropolitan, whatever word you want to use. And there's two sides to Staten Island. There is the North Shore, which is the side closest to the Staten Island Ferry, which everybody knows. And then there's the South Shore, which is closer to New Jersey, and that's where I live. And I remember one time there was a production outdoors of Romeo and Juliet, directed by Ariana Nicoletta, and she actually used that in her interpretation of Romeo and Juliet. It was a North Shore Juliet and a South Shore Romeo on Staten Island having this turf war. So I thought that was the most brilliant thing ever because it was completely accurate. And anyway, the nice thing in recent years is that it's become more friendly to writers as well as actors. Back in the day, like around let's say when I was in high school, the Staten Island theater community was very, very much a troupe of actors, different theater companies on Staten Island, some of them doing the same shows over and over and over.
A lot of Shakespeare, I'm sure.
No, I'm even talking about the musicals.
Oh, okay,
how many
okay.
Guys and Dolls, how many Once Upon a Mattress, how many Crucibles, how many, you know, all that. It's a lot of the same productions or titles, I should say. And and it was kind of baffling to me. I'm like, there's so many things out there. Why are you doing the same shows over and over again? Sometimes even with the same people, which again is crazy. And then I met Ariel Marcus Hollenbeck, and she informed me about this group that's started, I believe. Actually, I think it just celebrated its 5th anniversary, the Staten Island Women's Playwright Collective.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I joined in 2021.
Yeah.
And basically, we have monthly meetings where we talk about ideas for one acts, 10-minuters really, concepts and things like that. And then at the end of the cohort, so to speak, we have a showcase of all the plays that we've worked on for that year, all the 10-minute skits. And it's been tremendous, honestly. I've some of the women come back year after year. Some of them do a pop in for 1 year and then, you know, support the other times, you know. So I did it in 2021, 2022, and 2023. I am not doing it this year because I was advised that to give a new woman writer a chance to join the cohort, which is fine. I'm totally cool with that. I'm gonna miss it, but I'm not dissatisfied at all. And so even out of that group, I've gotten 3 short plays up on their feet, produced on Staten Island in a theater space, and people coming out to see it, and it feels really good.
What does it mean to belong to a group of women's writers for you?
I think it kind of, well, first of all, I love networking. I love meeting new people, especially those who share the same interests as I do, or kind of think in a similar way that I do. And I also, it kind of ties into what you said about the Staten Island theater scene. For a long time, I felt kind of left out of it because although I do act, it's not something I can do frequently because I don't drive, and I don't take public transportation on Staten Island very often. Obviously, I take the express bus to get into Manhattan, But I'm talking about within Staten Island, it's not always easy for me to get around. So I
Yeah.
couldn't really do many shows in an acting capacity because, going at rehearsals and all that.
Right.
So I would feel kind of left out, and then when I saw that there were some opportunities to at least put myself out there as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of jumped at it, and I was able to meet a different sector of people,
Mm-hmm.
not just the actors who do their thing pretty much exclusively, but also people like me who are really just as important to the world of the theater,
Yeah.
but it's not always thought about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in a tight knit community like Staten Island. You know?
Mm-hmm. I realize I said women's writers, which implies that you were writing for women. I meant women writers.
No, all good. I
know
knew.
you knew. You got it.
I'm not that nitpicky.
Who's your audience? Who do you want to watch your plays?
Oh, what a great question.
Not just women, or maybe just women.
No. So the way that I've learned to explain it is that I feel that writing, particularly writing for the stage, is my calling. Okay? It's how if you'll excuse the phrase, it's how I am going to minister to the human race. That sounds very grandiose, but stay with me here. And the goal that I try to do with everything that I write is to tell a good story, entertain, whatever, but also to teach my audience something and also to inspire them to make a positive change in their own lives.
Yeah.
It is very, very important to me as a writer that all of my work, even the serious stuff, even the dramas, it has to have an element of hope in some way. Because again, it kind of feels strange because so much theater these days is so topical and so serious and dark and there's a place for that. Of course there is. But that's not my role as a storyteller. That's not for me. They can do it and do that necessary work, and it's wonderful. But me, it's important. You have to show both sides of life, the bad stuff and the good stuff.
Yeah.
If it's just one or the other, not only is it not helpful, and I'll explain that in a moment, but it's also just not accurate. I was having a conversation about this at work today. Is bad things and good things have happened in spurts, up and down, since the dawn of time. Being in the present day doesn't mean that you have it any worse, so to speak, than somebody who lived in the 20s, the 70s, ancient Roman times, medieval England. It's all been going on.
Yeah, the human condition.
Yeah.
It just feels magnified with social media.
Exactly. That and yes, and therein is the difference, is that we just know about a lot more of it. It's not to
Of
say
the bad stuff.
Yeah. It's not to say that anything is happening worsely, which isn't a word, but or more often. It's just we're more aware of it now due to technology and social media and all that stuff. So I think it's important to kind of keep that in perspective. And when I say it's not helpful to only look at the bad stuff or be negative or doom scrolling, whatever they call it, is that, and also why I personally don't think that my writing a really depressing, dark play is appropriate for what I want to do, is that if you bring too much darkness to an audience, if you bum them out so much, you run the risk of crossing over from education and awareness of a situation or a topic or a cause to a state of despair. And once you cross that bridge, wind up doing something counterproductive, because despair leads to inaction. It leads to apathy. It leads to a feeling of, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. It sucks. And again, it defeats your original aim of trying to create a positive change. Which is all to say that I want to be a playwright who lifts audiences' spirits, to teach them something that they didn't know before,
Mm-hmm.
and inspire them to be a better person and, strive for a better world, and again, to never give up hope that any situation can improve. It ain't over till it's over.
Succinctly, what does hope mean to you?
To me, it's kind of the opposite of, let's say, maybe cynicism. It's kind of the opposite of that, because if you're at the far deep end of cynicism, like I'm talking way off the map, you don't believe that things can get better. You don't believe that things will get better. You don't think that people have inherently good intentions. And some people don't. No arguing that. But hope to me means that it's possible for things to get better. That if you or somebody or a bunch of you put in the effort and you really care and you really try, you can get there. But you have to at least try.
Yeah. So I noticed that in your online branding,
Oh,
no, it's good. It's good. I think it's good. You mentioned that you are an actress with autism.
I am.
So could you speak to what that has meant to you creatively, professionally, and how you have found others in the theater community responding to that, and you being open to that? Open with that, I mean.
Sure. It's been a long journey. Listen, I will tell you that. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 17. And girls are typically diagnosed a lot later than boys are. And when I was, it almost felt like a relief, because I finally understood why things happened the way that they did, and why I felt this way, and why other people saw things that I couldn't see, and vice versa. And I knew, and it was like, okay, I have this information now. I'm not a freak out, I'm not a complete nut job. My brain is just wired a little differently. Okay, now that I know this, I can start the work on improving the situation. So the best way that I can describe being on the spectrum is, or one of the best ways, is that things that most folks know instinctively, you kind of have to be told outright or taught as if it were a lesson in school. And it's you're going to have some hiccups along the way. Let's put it that way. And the reason that I began disclosing, being on the spectrum, is because I'd rather people kind of know in advance sometimes, just in case if I do slip up in some way, whatever that means to you, you'll know that it's not because I'm trying to be disrespectful and I'm not, just a weirdo. There is a legitimate, it's not an excuse. Of course not. If you do the same things over and over again, that just becomes a choice.
Right.
But it's an explanation. And I always, and I tell people all the time, if I am making you uncomfortable, tell me. No, don't make me guess, because it's happened before where I would upset somebody, or they'd feel awkward or uncomfortable, and I would have no idea. And then a lot of the times after I found out, it was too late to fix it. And that was very upsetting, because I didn't know that I had done anything wrong.
Right.
So I'd rather be told, and thank you, I've heard it, I understand now, I will do better, and we can move on and have and clear the air and fix things and, you know, not burn any bridges and all that. And I just, it's happened, like I said, it's happened before, and I do not want for it to occur again.
Do you feel that in being upfront about it, people tend to be more patient or have more
Yes.
empathy? Yeah.
Yes, especially at work, the folks that I work with at Broadway Licensing Global, they are wonderfully supportive. They are very understanding. They give me great feedback. I express my gratitude for their willingness to work with me and tell me things, you know, so that I can fix them again before they catch fire.
Yeah.
You asked also how that ties into me creatively.
Yeah.
Although my altruistic goal is to inspire hope in my audiences and stamp out cynicism and all that stuff, my selfish goal is because writing is how I express myself the best. I am very good with words. I always was. Even when I was a little kid, I had people would say I talk like an adult. No, really, I had a very mature vocabulary. And one of the things, to little tangent here, one of the things that the kids at school were really bothered by was that I used big words.
Right.
That my vocabulary was very advanced, and it kind of freak them out. And but luckily I get to use that to my advantage when I write. And my plays are all very, very verbal language driven. And it also ties into the common spectrum trait of not being so hot with nonverbal cues. And so, you know, the more words that I can use, the more that people talk to me plainly and, you know, clearly, the better I'll be. And the other fun thing about being a writer is that I get to kind of not only express the real me, but also kind of express things that might live in my head, but that I don't actually execute in reality.
Right.
For instance, I'm currently working on a script, which is kind of a little outside my comfort zone. It's got a cast of 10 characters as opposed to my other plays, which have smaller casts.
Right.
And it's also it's kind of like a murder mystery. And and similar to Cost of Conquest, the play that you read for me. Similar to that, it has different endings, kind of branching endings. The difference is that this will be a full length, and Cost of Conquest was a one act. But anyway, this scene that I just wrote last night is this character who is a high-ranking member of a conspiratorial society, and she is one of those, you know, straight-laced, serious, poised, sophisticated kind of types. And I was able to use all the obnoxious big words that I wanted to in her dialogue, and it was just fine, you know, because it suited the character. And I was just really proud of myself after the fact that I was able to use this quirk, so to speak, that traditionally was very annoying, and actually turn it into something that an audience can enjoy as part of this story.
Right. So earlier you mentioned that video games inspire you in your writing.
Yes.
Could you talk more about that?
Well, it started with the Fire Emblem inspiration for Cost of Conquest. But also this play that I just mentioned, great segue, is this murder mystery play is inspired by a genre of video game known as the visual novel. So, visual novels are a game that originated in Japan, and they were very popular in Japan for a long time. But only recently, within maybe the past decade or so, they had crossed the pond over to the U.S., and they're growing in popularity, honestly. There's a lot of them on the Nintendo Switch system and Steam and all those. And visual novels are interactive stories, basically, where you move the dialogue boxes along, and the inputs that you give, you have conversations with other characters, you solve puzzles, it moves the plot along, it can affect the plot, which is where the branching endings comes into play. And I loved so many of them that I thought I can take some of these tropes and incorporate them into a script, a live theater script. And there are 3 identifying characteristics in particular that are reflected in this play that I am working on. And that is a mystery plot. A lot of visual novels are mystery-based, where you interrogate people, you look for evidence and all that. A colorful cast of characters. That is a really big thing, because every character in a visual novel is completely bonkers and over the top and crazy outfits and quirky personalities. So I employed that very enthusiastically. And then the last part of visual novels that I am using is that even though they deal with pretty serious situations, murders and that stuff, they have a lot of infusions of humor. The dialogue in a visual novel is everything. It's got to be snappy, it's got to be memorable, it's got to be funny, all that stuff. And the best visual novels are able to combine puzzle-solving mechanics with really compelling conversations and a twisty story that you just want to keep playing to find out what happens next. And I even put this in the author's note of my script, that whoever plays these roles in the future should play them big and bold and bizarre. That is exactly what I said.
3 Bs.
Yes. I said if there is a place for having fun and being a caricature, it is in a visual novel-inspired story.
Interesting. Huh.
The name of this play, incidentally, is The Dead Die Repeatedly.
You like alliteration. At least for this.
I do, unfortunately.
Not unfortunately. It's catchy.
Well, thank you.
All right. We are just about to wrap up. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, listen. The only thing that I can tell the world is to see an element of yourself in everybody that you encounter. You have to, what I always say is, I will believe the best about somebody until they show me otherwise. So until somebody shows you otherwise, that they are not a good person, don't go into it with that assumption. You've got to give somebody a chance. You've got to get to know them underneath the surface. You've got to listen. You've got to learn from them. And that is the only way, to connect with others, whether you're autistic or not. It works for me, but it should work for anybody.
Yeah, well said. You've been watching Badass Ladyfolk. I'm your host, Christine Stoddard. Tune in next time.